From doubt to dominance, the Ohio State Buckeyes are still alive in the college football playoffs. I'm JR, and I'm the host of the Big Ten Huddle. You can catch us on Sunday and Tuesday nights talking football at 9 p.m., Monday mornings talking Big Ten basketball power rankings. And then typically on Thursdays, you can find at least me, possibly another guest, talking Big Ten basketball as well. You can also follow, like, and subscribe to the channel as we put out extra videos and things like that during the week as well. Listen, Ohio State is the clear favorite in my mind as the national championship team in college football right now. And the numbers bear that out as well following the game against Oregon, which Ohio State dominated that game. Oregon looked like they had a little life starting in the third quarter. We'll talk about that in a second. But overall, Ohio State looks like the most dominant team in college football right now, even though they lost to Oregon earlier in the regular season, and then they had the heartbreaking loss to Michigan, which really caused a lot of the doubt that happened with Ryan Day and why many people were upset with him and possibly even wanting him fired. I even myself on an Ohio State podcast said it might be time for Ohio State to move on from Ryan Day if he is not able to deliver and win what is needed for Ohio State to accomplish their goals. But let's first start with this Ohio State Oregon game. Ohio State just absolutely dismantles the previously unbeaten Oregon Ducks, a team whose fans were calling for Ryan Day's job, like Ohio State fans were calling for Ryan Day's job. They are now the favorite on pretty much everywhere you look for odds to win the national championship. We're going to first break down Ohio State's dominant 41-21 win over Oregon and how the Buckeyes put on a clinic of what it means to head to the college football semifinals and be that favorite. This team has faced adversity this season, losing to Oregon, losing to Michigan. Ryan Day has been doing everything he possibly can to keep this team on the right track, despite people wanting for him to lose his job, not just advocating for him to lose his job, but people actively wanting him to lose his job because they don't think Ohio State is the same program under Ryan Day that it has been under previous coaches like Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. But in this game, Ohio State looked like that dominant team. In the first half, Ohio State comes out and they are just absolutely dominant. Ohio State wasted no time in setting the tone of the game as Jeremiah Smith got things rolling with a 45-yard touchdown catch on the Buckeyes' first drive. And from there, it was all Ohio State, reminiscent of that Tennessee game where Jeremiah Smith made the first touchdown grab of the game. This touchdown grab was a little different, but still a huge grab for them, saying we are here and you better hope you can stop us. Will Howard threw for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the offense was clicking on all cylinders. They eventually built a 34-0 lead by in the first half. By the end of the first half, it was 34-8 as Oregon did score with time expiring, but they scored on 6 of their first 7 drives. That's the kind of offensive efficiency that championship teams are built on. Not only do you have that offense, but you also have a dominant defense as well, as Oregon was only able to score 8 points in that first half. And if you look at the drive charts and what Oregon did, 3 plays, 9 yards, 3 plays, 2 yards, 7 plays, 26 yards, ending with a punt, 7 plays, 23 yards, ending on downs, 3 plays, 6 yards, 3 plays, 2 yards, and then finally that last drive that was 10 plays, 75 yards. It's interesting because Ryan Day talks a lot about how this team has to win the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. In this game, Ohio State didn't quite do that as well as they normally do. Now, they did get a field goal on their final drive of the first half, but really the last few minutes of the first half was Oregon with that 10-play 75-yard drive that got a touchdown. And then you go into the second half and Oregon has an 11-play 75-yard drive to start the half, and Ohio State goes 3 and out, right? Ohio State struggled going into the second half with that 3 and out, and you kind of thought for a second, like, oh no, Is Oregon going to get back into this game? It's 34-15, 34-14. Is Oregon going to get themselves back in, or 34-15? Is Oregon going to get themselves back into this game? But Ohio State had the answers. I mean, Jeremiah Smith in this game, this guy had 187 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, added a rush for 5 yards as well, and was just practically unguardable the entire game. Jabbar Muhammad did make a nice pass breakup over the middle against him, but that was really a ball that was more on Will Howard than it was on Jeremiah Smith himself. Smith said earlier in the week that they played man-to-man and he's going to make them pay, saying that if he only has one guy on him, he's open. And when they asked him, when aren't you open? He said, when the whole team is guarding me. So this guy has the confidence to go out there and say, you better throw it to me because I'm open and I'm going to make my quarterback look good. His route running, his speed, the way he's able to create separation, it is a thing of beauty. Of course, Will Howard deserves a ton of credit too. He made pinpoint accurate throws, showed poise under pressure. The throw to Emeka Egbuka that was down the middle of the field, just dropping it in the bucket. It was reminiscent of the Justin Fields throw at the end of the Clemson game in 2020 when he hit who was it on that one? I think it was Chris Olave in that one when the ball hits him in just perfect stride and the Clemson player reached out for it to try and block it, but he just wasn't there enough. In this one, the Oregon player tried to block it. He just wasn't there enough. It was a perfectly thrown ball by Will Howard. 17 for 26 in this game. No interceptions. That's the type of quarterback performance that Ohio State needs, especially when they're going to have the defensive dominance that they had in this game. Ohio State's defense was lights out, particularly up front with that defensive line. After failing to sack Dillon Gabriel in their regular season loss, they sacked him 8 times in this game. 8 sacks for Ohio State. You're looking at 2 sacks for Cody Simon, a sack for safety Lathan Ransom, 2 sacks for JT Tuimoloau, defensive end. Jack Sawyer, defensive end, had 2 sacks, a sack for backup defensive end Caden Curry as well, which it wasn't just like garbage time, even though Ohio State was up by a lot. He still got in there and got himself a sack. And the unsung heroes in the middle, Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton. These dudes were getting push and after push after push on Oregon's interior of their offensive line. There's a lot of talk about Connerly and the tackles for Oregon and how good they are. And don't get me wrong, they are good, but the interior of this Oregon offensive line was falling apart with Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, and how amazing, just straight up amazing they were in this game, getting pushed not just in the pass rush, but also in the run game as well. Oregon came away in this game with negative 23 rushing yards. Now, a good amount of that is sacks. If you look at the individual players, Jordan James did have 7 carries for 14 yards. Limmer and Whittington combined for 7 yards themselves. So between the running backs, you had 21 yards, but when you take away the sack yards and everything else, and the wide receiver runs, like Tez Johnson had a run that was negative 1 yards as well, like it was just complete dominance stopping the run in this game. Oregon really had no answer for what Ohio State was going to do. And like I mentioned him earlier, Jack Sawyer was just a beast. Pass deflections, snuffing out the screen, the 2 sacks, actually had 3 pass breakups in this one, constant pressure on Gabriel. He is playing the best football of his career right now. He is on that Joey Bosa type of level right now that Ohio State fans have been clamoring for with JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, saying like, well, we got Larry Johnson, but where's Joey Bosa? Where's Chase Young? Where's Nick Bosa? Where are these guys that Larry Young has produced year after year after year? I got news for you. They're right here. Jack Sawyer is here, and JT Tuimoloau is here as well. These are 2 guys that make this defensive line so scary and such a big unit for teams to try and go up against, with how physically imposing they are, with how smart they are. And not to mention too, you go watch the game, Ohio State's defensive line was getting held all game, right? Was getting held the entire game. Now, I'm not going to complain about it because at the end of the day, it is what it is. You play through it. But they were getting held all game, and they still dominated this Oregon offensive line. And Cody Simon as well, linebacker. To me, he was probably player of the game. As good as Jack Sawyer was, I'm not trying to take anything away from Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer was amazing, but Cody Simon was player of the game. It felt like anytime there needed to be a hit on Dylan Gabriel, anytime there needed to be a play made, Cody Simon was there, the one to do it. 11 tackles, 2 sacks on his own. The defense completely shut down Oregon's run game. A big part of that was the defensive line. Like I said, Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, but Cody Simon. Sonny Styles, the other linebacker, he only had 4 tackles in this game, so he's not going to really pad the stats, but he did a good job in this one as well. Oregon's run game was just non-existent, holding them negative rushing yards. Like I said, negative 23 rushing yards, negative 0.8 rushing yards per carry. I mean, you want to talk about winning the rushing battle. That's winning the rushing battle right there. Ohio State had 181 rushing yards in this game. Oregon had negative 23. It was just an absolute epic performance by this Ohio State defense, who really struggled in that first game. I mean, like you talked to the defensive players. Cody Simon said it in the press conference afterward. That was the game where they dropped the ball. That was their worst game of the season, they said. And so to come back and play this team again, they're coming in. The safeties are playing up. It's not like they played 2 deep safeties the entire game. The safeties were coming up, but their safety play, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, in this game, he wasn't even a big name that was said. He's the best player on this defense, but he wasn't even a big name that was said because he didn't have to be, because the front 4 or the front 7 really was so dominant for this Ohio State team. I mean, you look at pros and cons, like, I don't know how many cons you can really come out of in this game. Ohio State did so many things well. Pretty much everything in the first half. They were balanced. They were explosive. I mean, we didn't even talk about the running game for Ohio State. Trevion Henderson broke off a 66-yard touchdown run to put him up 31-0. At that point, that was when I knew it's over. It's over. There is no way Oregon's coming back from this, right? Tom Brady came back 28-3 at one point in his career. You kind of felt like that could happen if maybe they got themselves a score and maybe they held it under 30 or something like that. But 31-0 in this one, it just felt like no matter what Oregon could do, they weren't going to be able to come back, particularly because they weren't going to be able to get the big plays that they needed to get down the field quick enough to be able to mount the comeback against Ohio State. Defensively, Ohio State, they were relentless with pressure, made it nearly impossible for Oregon to get anything going. If there is one concern, it's how they let Oregon score a couple times. Like I said, that middle part of the game, right? The last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, Ryan Day harps on that a lot. That's kind of what he really wants to see his team do well and win. But outside of that, they won the entire game. Oregon put together 2 drives, a 10-play, 75-yard drive to end the half, and then they put together an 11-play, 75-yard drive to start the half. Outside of that, there was really nothing Oregon was able to do, and a lot of it was because Oregon just didn't have the receiver play in this one. Evan Stewart got hurt at the beginning of the game in warmups, and Tez Johnson, he was kind of in and out in the game. Trayshawn Holden, a good game for him, but at the end of the day, Ohio State, they look like the team that's going to win the national championship. With a performance like this, Ohio State, they're no longer just a playoff team. They're no longer the team that people are saying, like, oh, only scored 10 points against Michigan. I mean, Michigan fans will probably still mention that because that's a feather in their cap. It's what they're going to do, right? Any team would do that. But people aren't thinking about that right now. Ohio State is the favorite to win the national championship, plus 125 last time I looked on FanDuel, and they've shown they can dominate on both sides of the ball. At this point, there's not a team in the playoffs that I don't think Ohio State could beat by 2 or 3 scores. Now, will they? Is the question, because I thought they could have beat Michigan by 4 or 5 scores, but they didn't. They lost to Michigan. That's the thing with this Ohio State team right now, is can they play to that level that they are with young, talented stars like Jeremiah Smith, with proven senior leadership like Cody Simon and Jack Sawyer, Will Howard. Like, can those guys get this team to play at that level? What's remarkable here is how Ryan Day has turned this entire season around. Now, don't get me wrong. Ryan Day deserves all the criticism. Not all the criticism, because players still have to play. He deserves a ton of criticism for the loss against Michigan. But he also deserves, and I don't know if Ohio State fans are ready to give this to him yet, but at some point you're going to have to. he also deserves a ton of credit for that team putting that game behind them and saying, we still got work to do. Because the fans didn't put that game behind them. The fans were still thinking about that game. The fans still wanted to kind of mope around and say, oh, we didn't beat Michigan and all this stuff. But Ryan Day and these players, they put it behind them. They said, we got work to do. We got to go win ourselves a national championship. We've never accomplished winning the Big Ten, beating Michigan, and winning a national championship ever since 2021. But they have to do that this year. They have to win themselves the national championship, because at Ohio State, the goals are beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. Their only goal left in their entire career for some of these guys who have been there for 4 years is to win the national championship. And Ryan Day has these guys focused on doing that. For Ryan Day, it's a sign of a coach who knows how to rally his team when it counts. It's a sign of a team that has culture. It's a sign of a team that's bought in to their head coach, right? I've heard some people say, like, oh, there's rumors Ohio State players don't like their coaches or they don't like Ryan Day or something like that. BS. Are you kidding me? You can't watch this team and say these players don't love their head coach. You can't watch this team and say these players don't love their university. They don't love their brothers. And that's the kind of stuff you have to have on a national championship team. Not only the talent and the coaching, but also the culture, right? It was a huge sticking point for Michigan last year and how they were able to make it to the national championship themselves. The culture, the brotherhood, guys who are selfless and willing to work together. You got guys in this team like Carnell Tate, who could be a wide receiver one in 95% of other schools in college football. In this game, I mean, he didn't do much of anything. In this game, he had one catch for 10 yards. He had 3 targets, so at least they were targeting him. But he's still content to block his butt off and do everything he possibly can to get this team to win, because that's culture. Because that's a head coach that has his guys bought in to accomplish the goal that they need. But their toughest test is yet ahead, right? Oregon was a huge test. Oregon probably is going to be their toughest test. But their next toughest test is this Texas showdown. Okay, let's not get too ahead of ourselves just yet. Ohio State has a very tough matchup against Texas, who many believe is the best defense in the nation, who many believe has the best defensive line unit. Maybe not the best 4 starting line defensive linemen, but the best starting line unit with how they were able to rotate guys in there. I mean, this team finished second in the SEC. They'll present a much tougher challenge for Ohio State. And of course, you got the storyline. Old Ohio State quarterback Quinn Ewers, who said it himself. He wanted to beat the team up north earlier this year. He's still got a little bit of Ohio State in him. It's going to come down to Ohio State and Texas and the old Ohio State quarterback Quinn Ewers in the semifinals of the college football playoffs to get to the end and play for the national championship. The storylines, they write themselves, right? This is the kind of stuff that we love with the 12-team playoff, seeing matchups like this, seeing storylines and narratives and everything like this happen. The quarterback that Will Howard had his best game against last year of his career before he got to Ohio State, but fell short because his team wasn't able to get it done against Texas. I mean, the storylines and everything here. Can Ohio State finish the job? That's the question. Because at this point, it's not a question about if Ohio State is good enough. Ohio State is the best team in the country. Ohio State has the most talent in the country. Ohio State has the best players in the country. Can Ohio State stay focused enough? Can their coaches game plan well enough? Can their players execute well enough? Because they have the best team in the country. No doubt in my mind about that. Can they execute and play well enough to beat Texas, move on to the national championship? Will they either face Penn State, Notre Dame, or Georgia? We'll see what happens there. But this game is going to be huge. This game against Texas is going to mean so much. And Ohio State sits atop the national championship odds right now. They're my pick to win the national championship at this point. And honestly, they should probably be your pick as well. Let me know what you think. Comment, like, and subscribe. If you think Ohio State is not the national championship favorite for some reason, you're like, JR, you're totally overlooking this one detail here or this thing here, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think as well. Like, subscribe. We got Big Ten basketball, Big Ten football content for you all the time, doing a ton of game recaps and things like that. Got the live show with me and Zach Guggenheim of Big Ten Football Talk. We're having a lot of fun doing a lot of crazy things. So, like and subscribe here. We definitely appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.